Java Megaforce? This is how you take a previous game's ideas and make it even better. Dynasty Warriors 4 Empires was a fun take on mixing the hack and slash formula with a bit more strategy, but it was a pretty basic experience. Koei released an Empires spin-off to the 5th entry in the Dynasty Warriors franchise in 2006 for the PlayStation 2, and for the first time in most territories on the Xbox 360. The two versions are identical outside of improved graphics and achievements on the 360 version, so I'll mostly be focusing on showcasing the HD release for most of this review. With that out of the way, let's get started.
Everybody follow me, and we shall reclaim the capital. The Han must be returned to its former glory!
Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires was released roughly 1 year after the original game, and only about 6 months after the game's first expansion, Dynasty Warriors 5 Extreme Legends. Like Extreme Legends, Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires is a standalone experience. However, unlike previous Extreme Legends installments, the Empires content cannot be remixed with the other builds of the sub-series. In fact, it's probably better to think of the Empires games as spin-offs rather than actual expansions. There's enough changes introduced to make them have a distinct feeling of their own that isn't replicated by the mainline games. Like in 4 Empires before it, you choose a character to act as a faction leader with the goal of unifying all of China. Although the frantic hack and slash action of the Musou games is present here, the focus has been shifted more towards diplomacy and strategy. Many of the actual battles can be skipped or automated, and you have the freedom to go about expanding your territory and choosing your battles at your own pace, within reason. And as previously, you can choose to either start with a historical setting, where the different regions have pre-selected forces that reflect who was there at the given time in the Three Kingdoms story, or a fictional setting, where kingdoms are randomized and potentially rife with your edit characters, if you choose it to be that way. There's significantly more freedom in how you set your game up here compared to in the last entry. You can set the length of your campaign, if each force can employ many or few officers, if officers will die naturally as they grow old in-game, and whether or not prisoners of war can be executed. You can even set it to either allow nations to shift their capital city if it's taken over, or if you somehow can take over the entire land despite only conquering 5% of a large kingdom's landmass. This small set of features really boosted the game's replayability on its own. It always felt weird to me in 4 Empires how my massive empire could only recruit such a small set of generals to manage it. And it was also annoying that the same officers I'd capture but couldn't recruit would have to be repeatedly released, only to pop up again fighting against me for some other kingdom. Now, I can just lop their heads off and not worry about them any longer. The gameplay is broken up into 2 major gameplay types, a political phase and a battle phase. The political phase takes place in between battles. Here, you're able to look at an overworld map containing the entirety of China, which is separated into roughly 25 zones. You're able to view which forces currently control different zones of China, see potential items that can be made in these areas, review your revenue from the zones you control, and pay revenue for policy upkeep and enactable mandates. View your own force structure and numbers of infantry, forge alliances, and most importantly, enact policies that greatly affect how the game plays out. The political phase is very similar to that of its predecessor, however you do have significantly more options here, as well as more control in enacting those options. As previously, there are lists of policies that can be enacted that accomplish different things for your kingdom. Depending on which is used, they may boost your kingdom's commerce or military equipment, allow you to recruit additional officers to your cause, engage in foreign relations, fortify military ranks or defenses, manipulate battlefields in your favor before any fighting even starts, or allow you to use special equipment or tactics during battle to give your armies an edge. There are about 75 policies now, about a third more than that found in 4, and all the new ones feel like a natural extension of the previous system. One cool new policy is the ability to annex rival kingdoms by isolating their leader or taking their capital. It'd be really cool if you could also create vassal kingdoms, but I'm not complaining about what has been done here. Like last time, at the beginning of each turn, you can consult your officers to choose one of a handful of paired policies proposed to you or reject all of them. But there's so much more to it now. For starters, the amount of moves or orders you can make per turn varies based off the size and therefore power of your empire. Once your kingdom becomes substantially large, you can make up to 5 orders per turn. You can also delegate all orders to a single trusted officer, good for increasing a given general's influence and making them more likely to be elevated within your hierarchy, or you can kiss all of those stupid NPC decisions goodbye, roll up your sleeves, and just tell everyone what you want done using the assign option. Granted, you have to unlock the different policies by enacting them after they randomly appear in the consultation or delegation strategy sections, which for the record was a nice touch in regards to balance, but it makes the game so much better to play at a higher level. Assign was a beautiful addition to the game that really made the sequel for me. Combine this with a higher difficulty and certain Empire mode tweaks, and Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires can actually feel like a real strategy game, and not just an action one with very light strategy elements. The strategy has just been so substantially enhanced compared to N4. Region dynamics are likewise surprisingly improved. As previously, all regions have their own unique items that can be made, from mounts to orbs to equipable items. Actually, 4 new items have been added to the game to raise the effectiveness of your steeds and other animals, which was a nice addition. On that note, I still think it's stupid that horses and items are only usable once before having to be remade. Like, does my mount die in every single battle? I prefer it be more difficult to get items that stick around and make a lasting impact on my game, but I see the appeal in balancing with it the way it is here. New to 5 Empires, up to 6 officers, more specifically 3 generals and 3 lieutenants, can be stationed at each region. Officers can't just teleport to wherever you're attacking or being attacked now. You have to strategically decide where you want your different officers to go, and what sides of your kingdom you want to be more or less fortified. It's especially important in the early game, where there are far more enemies on every side of you, and you simply don't have the resources or manpower to protect all your regions. And the game's AI is decent enough to take advantage of this. The areas most likely to be attacked are those that have the least firepower. I actually had to use a little bit of my brain in a Warriors game, and after playing so many modern Koei titles, I almost forgot what that was like. Also, a subtle but cool point, the political phase music changes depending on what region your force leader is stationed in. I appreciate the small things. Let's talk a bit about the other side of Empires that's probably a bit more familiar to the average Musou fan, the battle phase. It is possible to trigger a handful of special stages with their own unique cutscenes in-game, although this can only be done in historical settings, usually only once, and only by doing very specific things in a very specific way. During battle, you have either 15 minutes to defend your region, or 30 minutes to conquer it if you are invading. Running out of time during a defense results in a victory, while running out of time during an invasion results in a loss. These times can be tweaked in the game's political phase by enacting specific policies. During offensive battles, your goal is to capture the opposing faction's enemy camp or rout their leader, and although you can run straight to the enemy main camp, you probably will not be able to capture it without also taking the majority of linked enemy bases throughout the map. During defensive battles, you similarly can gain victory by taking out the leader or the opposing force, or again, surviving until time runs out. Once you're in battle, things are pretty similar to what you've seen in vanilla Dynasty Warriors 5. There are a handful of new stages present that weren't in the base game, as well as a few other changes though. Similar to vanilla 5 and 4 Empires, a base system is present here. You capture bases that are linked together to gain access to the enemy's primary base, which, if you're able to capture, wins you the battle. The bases have mostly had their small fort-like structures found in 5 removed in favor of much larger open ones, especially in the game's larger stages. Unlike in 4 Empires, where bases could only be captured by defeating all the generic enemies within, bases here are now conquered by defeating a given number of guard captains or officers within them. I feel like this was a good change, and makes it feel a little more tactical. Generally, enemies use much more advanced tactics than in previous entries. They're prone to retreat with low health, and skirt around the map, presumably fulfilling their own specific objectives. There are even a few graphical improvements, specifically in regards to the environmental effects. Powered up characters look so much cooler here than they did in Dynasty Warriors 5. It looks like something more out of Dragon Ball than a Warriors title. After battle, you're often able to upgrade your weapons, and the system here is pretty good. You can add different effects to your own weapons, and sometimes swap out the same effect with a better version of itself. What's really neat is that weapon and officer experience can be transferred over to new Empire runs if you want them to. allowing the game to have a sense of progression and something you'll probably need to do if you plan on playing on the game's max difficulty. Also at your battles, you can choose to employ captured officers if they're willing and you have the gold, dismiss them, or execute them if you've allowed executions in your run. It's a great system that doesn't really need any improvements at this point. There's all the big aspects of Empire Mode, but there are a few additions to the game to keep you playing afterwards. Free mode appears for the first time in an Empires game, allowing you to play any of the game stages with any set of characters you want, in either an offensive or defensive setup. The game has default characters that are appropriate given the geography of every area, but feel free to switch it up to your heart's content. You're also able to look at unlocked art and change the game's background music, now including tracks from previous Warriors installments. Unfortunately, there's no additional versus mode in this game. They were a surprisingly fun set of content in 4 Empires, and I was probably more upset than I should have been when I found out we wouldn't be getting another set of off-the-wall modes to play against friends here. Edit mode also returns, and is very similar to that found in Dynasty Warriors 5 Extreme Legends. It's a really good system, and the fact that so many later games use the same models with very few improvements attests both to how good the system is here, and also the sheer laziness Koei is willing to bring to the table. So there it is. Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires is a pretty good title. In fact, for many, I could see this being the better, more played game than even Dynasty Warriors 5, the game it's based on. The game is pretty cheap nowadays on both the PlayStation 2 and Xbox 360. I originally played the PS2 version of the game, and while the Xbox version is clearly superior in terms of graphics, you won't miss anything by choosing one version over the other. Both versions are great, and I wholeheartedly recommend anyone that may have a passing interest in the game to give it a shot. It's among the most fun I've had in a Musou title, and one I'll continue to return to for years to come. Thanks for tuning into my review of Dynasty Warriors 5 Empires. For gameplay of this and other Musou games, check out my other channel, Jay Plays Archives, where I chronicle all the gameplay you see in my reviews. I'll leave a link in the description below. Also, if you like this video, be sure to drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more retrospective reviews of the Musou series. Let me know your favorite moments from Dynasty Warriors or other Musou games in the comments below. Thanks for watching.